So, this is a message that I've been thinking about for a long time for us, and I want to share this with you. It's called The Church Unleashed. And I first ran across this when I was up in Pennsylvania at the Presbyterian Church, and I met a man named Frank Tillpaugh who was doing a conference for our presbytery. And he wrote a book called Unleashing the Church, getting people out of the fortress into the ministry. And his church grew from 110,000 people in the space of a decade, Bear Valley Baptist Church. And he had some very interesting advice. It was real interesting because I wanted to implement it in my church, and I hit a stone wall. And he told me, he said, if the people who are in control of a church, whether they are formally in control like the elders or they are informally in control because they have the money and the strength behind it, and not willing to go forward with a plan, they're like the nobles of Tekoa who would not put their shoulder to the wheel. And he said it's better to go out and dig ditches than it is to try and work at a church like that. I should have listened to him. It got really bad. But that's another story. So, let's switch glasses here. We'll lead into this with just the beginning of the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is a man who's the cupbearer for the king. And he was working there, and in the month of Chislev, in the 12th year, I was in Susa, the capital, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant is there in the province who had survived the exile, is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and the gates are destroyed by fire. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. So here's a man who is in exile, and he's serving a king. He's been given a high position. And to go before the king with a sad face was a dangerous thing. And he had never been sad before in the presence of the king, Artaxerxes, and the king asked him what was wrong, and he told him about his sorrow over Jerusalem, and the king granted him permission to go to Jerusalem and rebuild it. This is a sign of restoration and a miracle. So one of the principles that Frank Tillpaugh shares is called "Everyone is on the wall." And Andrew, if you agree with this next set of verses.
Nehemiah 4:7-18. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Asherites heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and that the breaches were beginning to be closed, they were very angry. And they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. And we prayed to our God and set a guard as a protection against them day and night. In Judah it was said, the strength of those who bear the burden is failing. There is too much rubble. By ourselves we will not be able to rebuild the wall. And our enemy said, they will not know or see till we come among them and kill them and stop the work. So in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, in open places, they stationed the people by their clans, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome. And fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, we all returned to the wall, each to his work. From that day on, half of my servants worked on construction, and half held spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. And the leaders stood behind the whole house of Judah, who were building on the wall. Those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and held his weapon with the other. And each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side while he built.
So, Frank used this illustration that when God is working in his house, there isn't any place for anybody to sit on the sideline. Everyone has to be involved in something. So if the walls are broken down and they need to be rebuilt, it's going to require every person to be on the wall. And so that is applying to the church, that everyone has a calling and a ministry. And he said that's the second principle he gave. Everyone has a calling and from God, and all are called to be ministers of salvation. There isn't any place that you are exempt. There aren't, as Gary has often said, there are pastors and there are ministers. You are the ministers of the church. The word ministry means service, and we are your servants, but we're here for another purpose. So if you read the next section, Ephesians.
Ephesians 4:11 through 16. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love.
So, the job of the pastors and teachers, evangelists, and the prophets and the apostles is to help you fulfill your calling. It's not for us to do your work, it's for us to help you become who your God has called you to be. So the third principle is, how do you find your calling from God? It's by listening, asking and praying and seeking His face. So, in other words, I can't tell you what your calling is. There's no one here who can tell you what your calling is. We maybe help identify it in the gifts that you have, but we can't tell you what God's telling you. That's not our role or our job. We can help you discern it maybe, but really you have to seek God for yourself. So he gave examples of what happened in his ministry that caused it to grow from 100 to 10,000 in a decade. And he said one of the ministries that came out of his church was called Mothers of Preschoolers, or MOPS Ministries. I don't know how many people have heard that before. Okay, so it went national. Now this lady was a high school graduate. That's all she had for education. And she had this sense of calling from God of other women who were raising their children at home and didn't know what to do. And they had young children, so they couldn't really go out and work. And obviously, a lot of times you can't make enough money when you have to pay a babysitter and work and still make money. And it's kind of a lost cause. So she started inviting women over to church, and they'd have a babysitter and they would have fellowship. They'd have coffee and drinks and cakes or whatever it was, and they would study the Bible together. Well, this little ministry grew from a little local church ministry to a national ministry because this woman heard the voice of God for her life. Someone of no account, with no great education, not a doctor, lawyer, opinion chief, and she heard what God asked her to do, and God used those simple things to reach women all over the country. And it was such a practical, simple ministry. The other ministry he mentioned was one, and I don't remember the name of it is, but you may have heard of something like this. They would invite nationally known sports speakers to have a dinner not in a church, but in a public place. And the sports figure would give an evangelical call to the families and the couples that had come. And so people began to get saved, and they got enthusiastic, and they began to do this ministry, and that also went national. And so this thing that started by a couple people hearing from the voice of God led to an explosion of ministry. So we have some ministries here locally, and there are things like what's the CEF it's called? Child Evangelism Fellowship.
Yeah.
And that's to reach kids in schools. And Carpenter's Helpers, Crisis Bread Basket, nursing home visitations. Not everything has to be huge to be God's will. That's the thing. You have to listen to what God's calling you to do. It may be something simple. It may be something like helping your neighbor mow the lawn. I mean, I don't know what your calling is. But the fact is that if you're listening to the voice of the Lord and He's calling you to do something, you're walking in the footsteps of Jesus as you help others, as you serve others. The word ministry means to serve. So God's calling you to serve. Now, the biggest mistake a lot of churches make is that they think that every kind of ministry has to be done in the house to build up the church, the building. But that's not necessarily true. Sometimes the most effective ministry takes place outside the church.
Amen.
So you've got to be willing to go step outside your boundaries and what you think is religion and church and God's calling, and start to think outside the box. Because God may have given you something years ago that you're thinking, oh, that can't be God, and probably it is. But it didn't fit your religious mindset and concept of what church and ministry is supposed to be. I want to break that wall, that barrier mindset down. That's not how God works. When we closed out our ministry in Slippery Rock, which was turned into be a mission to low-income community families and mostly to children under 6th grade and under. We were looking for a church to sit in and to go to after that because we had done it for 5 years, and we ended up turning that ministry over to a local Baptist church to take over. We had gotten worn out because all the children would come to the church, but none of the parents would come. And so after a while, these children got saved, and we had led 26 people to the Lord, and they got saved, and they got moved up out of that low-income community into other locations. Really interesting to watch. But as that attrited, and the parents wouldn't come, we had no one else to help us, and we just got worn out. So after 5 years, we handed that ministry over. And so we started visiting other churches and trying to figure out what we're supposed to do, and nothing felt right. It didn't fit. So we started a home church. And we did this for 10 years. And the Lord was teaching me something about my religious thinking, my religious mindset of what church is supposed to be. And I realized that if we were working with a small group of people and we couldn't get them to love one another, in the big churches, you can get mad at somebody and just sit on the other pew on the other side of the church. You never have to deal with them. You never reconcile, so you never learn what real love is like. Real love is getting to know somebody's fault and still being committed to them and loving them. It's not when everybody gets along and smiles at you and the veneer of politeness that we all wear at either in church or whatever. I said sometimes I did a whole sermon on once the veneer of politeness and tell you what you're really like when you get behind a car and somebody else is going too slow. Or they're cutting you off, and you'll find out what's really in your heart, and whether that you're really polite as you'd like to think you are, or not. So anyway. So he gave four principles. The fourth principle is guidelines for parachurch ministries. And they're very simple principles. There are 5 of them. He said, 1, stay out of moral trouble. Okay? Don't go sleeping with your neighbor's wife. And do try and do ministry. That's pretty self-explanatory. 2, stay out of doctrinal trouble. So we don't want you preaching another Jesus and still trying to be part of this fellowship, right? And then run it by the leadership just for safety's sake. That's not necessarily for approval, but it's just for confirmation. And 4th is don't ask the pastor to run the ministry. It's your ministry that God gave you. Frank Tillibaugh said, don't ask me to do this thing. I'm going to be home watching the game on Sunday. That's what. But the idea is that if it's God's calling you to do something, don't expect somebody else to do it. Don't bring this thing to you, the pastor, and say, "Oh, now I have this vision. You do it." It's like asking your dad, your mom to tie your shoes when you're 20 years old. It doesn't really work. So the 5th thing is when you bring it to the congregation for asking to, you say, "Let's you have this ministry you want to start," and you bring it to the congregation and say, this is what we're after we want to do, and we think God's called it. If you don't get the volunteers or the help you need, then you have to trust God with the outcome. It can be that it might not be the right timing for God to do this. It can be God's will and calling, it just isn't the right time. you have to live with that. Maybe it's training you in something instead of, it's not to mature you or whatever it is, or to teach you patience. The other thing, it might not be God's will. That's a possibility too. And you have to live with that. And sometimes things that we want to do, we don't get to do. And Gary wanted to be a rock and roll star. I think that's what he told us before. And so he had to get demoted to be a preacher. Well, I wanted to be a rock and roll star too. I didn't get to do that either. There's a lot of things that I was thinking about this morning. It was a tough night last night, and I was thinking about, okay, things aren't going the way I wanted to. Things that I've had dreams about didn't get fulfilled. But I'm just going to praise God anyway because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to praise Him anyway. And there's a scripture in Malachi. It says, even though there's no fruit on the vine, there's no cattle in the stall, there's no wheat in the basket or something like that, yet will I praise you. Yet will I praise you. I'll praise you no matter what happens. And there's something beautiful about that. If you're willing to praise God and you don't get your way, you're growing up. And the only way out of sometimes the morose depression is to praise Him in the midst of those things. To give Him thanks no matter what. He's worthy of praise all the time. We may not see it, we may not understand what's happened or why, but it's the only thing that we can do is to be free of the fear, the depression, the condemnation, the guilt, or the disappointment, is to praise Him. It is our healing, because we lift ourselves out of our concerns into Him, His presence. And so, anyway, it's a tough lesson, and it's hard to do, but just make a determination of your will to do it anyway, and it helps. It heals. So that is the part of first part of the message, and that is something that you're going to have to meditate on and pray about what God's calling you to do. Okay? Can I hear an amen? Okay. So there's no way I can belabor that point because that's on you. I'm done with that part. That's the easy part. So the next thing I wanted to share with is called mission versus maintenance. And this is a sign of a healthy or sick church. And I've been in both. And in NASA, when it first got started, I took a course in public administration, and I was not before seminary trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life, and I was in social services, and took this course at GW called public administration. And I don't remember too much about this course except for this one thing that this guy said that just stuck with me forever. And he said, in NASA in the early years, people were so focused on the mission that they did not care who was doing what. They would work 24 hours a day and not realize it, 36 hours, because they were trying to get to the moon. They were in battle with the Americans. And they knew that they had to do this thing. It was so important that they forgot about themselves and they got involved in the mission and the goal. They were out there. And so they weren't bothered about who was in charge of what. After they got to the moon, people began to be worried about who was in charge of which and what. And it went from mission to maintenance or management. And management is when we're concerned about the color of the carpet. Right? And who's in charge of which, and who's in charge of what. And we have forgotten the Great Commission. Because there is only one commission that God's given the church, and that is to go out and make disciples of all nations. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given unto me by my Father. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them into the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. And that is God's commission on all the church, the whole church. As a matter of fact, he said, first this gospel we preach to all nations, and then the end will come. In other words, he's not going to come back for a defeated church. He's going to come back for a church that has fulfilled the Great Commission, gone out and accomplished it, and preached the gospel to all the world. He's going to come back for a victorious church, not a defeated one. It'll come in the midst of persecution, but it's going to come, it'll still accomplish its task. So I have a question for you. What is the church? Yeah, amen. No, we are the church. We are the church. A lot of times we say we're going to church. We really aren't going to church. We are the church. We are the church. The word church is a Greek word from, it's called ecclesia, and it's a gathering of citizens called out from their homes into some public place, an assembly of the people convened for the council of the purpose of deliberating. And it actually, the word ecclesia means the governing body of the city. So the church is actually supposed to be God's government in a particular city. That's what the church is. So, the sign of a healthy church is that it's more involved in outward looking to do things for others, hearing the voice of God and the calling of God, and not worried about the building and the carpet and projects that will eventually burn up. These will all burn. I remember I was telling a friend that's here today that Thomas Jefferson said that a revolution every 50 years clears the air. And I thought, after being in the Presbyterian Church for so long, that it would probably be a good idea if the church burned down after 50 years, not the physical building, but the actual, and it dissolved and started afresh. Because you don't have all the traditions and the baggage that people put on, and like who's in charge of this, who's in charge of that. You don't find that in new plantings. When you have new plantings, people are so energized about building a new church, gathering and reaching the people, that they are not worried about those things. And it's only after people are settled in, or especially the second generation, people start fighting over who's in charge of which and what. And it's a sign that the church is not following commission and may be dying. And been in enough old-time mainline churches to know that death smells. It just doesn't. There's something wrong. It's not doing anything to reach the young, the outcasts, or whatever. It's just worried about, are you ready for the time? Been there, seen it. Yeah. Anyway. So that's the two messages today. It's pretty simple, and I don't have to do anything about it. It's totally on you. So anyway, we're going to have communion now. Any questions, by the way? I'll just open that up. Thank you, God. So, Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for your presence with us. We bless this communion, Lord. It is what you gave us on the night we were betrayed. You took bread, and after giving thanks, you broke it and gave it to us and said, take it. This is my body given for you. Do this to remember me. And likewise, after supper, you took the cup. And after giving thanks, you gave to us, saying, this is the new covenant of my blood, shed for many for remission of sins. Do this as often as you drink it